Welcome to episode 34 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football and make the replacement refs look like pros. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right, but I know someone who's not doing as well. So I can be like what an emotional support friend.
Yeah, we should have reversed roles so that you were asking me how I was doing so that I could not respond to you and keep my head in a ditch. So we're live here on YouTube during the regular season and the off season on Monday night, typically around 7:30 p.m. This is our final episode of the 2019/2020 NFL season that concluded with Super Bowl 54 yesterday, February 2nd. So we're going to have some off season in front of us and a couple of exciting things we have planned for that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. First, we must talk about the Super Bowl, the game that happened yesterday. We're going to do that. We're going to talk about our favorite Super Bowl commercials this year. We're going to do our biggest disappointments of 2019, football-related disappointments, of course, and then end with our recap of our Super Bowl prediction and our closing of the 2019 season. So let's go ahead and dive into the game. So just as an overview, kind of a recap of what happened. So the Chiefs win 31-20. But I have to say before we get too far in that the Niners were winning 2010 with 6:23 left in the fourth quarter. So if you had taken us, if we had just been able to freeze time at that moment, we'd be having a completely different show. But we can't do that. There's legally there have to be 60 minutes in a football game. But that may or may not be something that Kyle Shanahan knows. So we're going to talk about that. But I actually kind of want Joseph to go first on this one because everybody's expecting me to be depressed and to be salty and all that. But I kind of want to let our viewers hear the other perspective first before we get into the nitty gritty of how I feel on this one.
Sure. So I'll start with the dramatic responses that people have had, and kind of bring those back to reality. So I do not think the Niners choked. There were some poor decisions made. There were some poor executions, which then leads to my next beef is this is not all Kyle Shanahan's fault. This is not as tragic as the Falcons Patriots loss. And he should not be fired. There should be no change or anything like that. The Chiefs came back, and Mahomes did what he does. He comes back and he wins, and he's clutch. And he played well. So overall, I'd say it was a good game. It was an exciting game. I didn't really feel bored at any moment. I thought it was well balanced. I do think that these were two of some of the best teams in the league, outside of maybe the Ravens and the Saints on a good day. So, but both teams showed up, and like I said, it was exciting. It was consistent, and they played each other well. I do think that the Chiefs defense played better than what was expected. Was not expecting it, especially in clutch moments. And their run game was solid too. Damian Williams was very good. 17 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown, as well as another 29 receiving yards and another touchdown. The Niner run game was good, but could have been even better. I guess before I'm sure you'll say, but one of my biggest criticisms for the Niners is their run game was good and they should have kept using it. I don't know why Coleman only had 5 attempts, 5 carries, and Mostert only had 12. So that's a little surprising to me. Jimmy G did better than people are saying. That last interception was desperation. The other one he got hit as he was throwing. Understandable. Mahomes had 2 interceptions as well. But for a while there, Jimmy G was pretty efficient. He was accurate. He can't be blamed for that Kittle catch that got taken away because of the penalties. Overall, I thought the game was called pretty well. They let them play a lot. There weren't that many penalties. There were some controversial ones. I know that, and we'll get into them. But overall, I thought the game was called pretty well. And uh, best of luck to the teams moving forward. And I'm glad Mahomes got it. But um, I guess I'll end with saying the Niners are legit. Not that I didn't think that before, but just want to make that clear. The Niners are legit. That defensive line, those guys are tanks, and they did rush Mahomes pretty well, in my opinion. Wide receivers, the Niners will have some decent wide receivers. You should keep Jimmy G. I think you have a solid team for moving forward for the next several years.
So I'm I'm glad you laid out that perspective first, because I think it's a somewhat different perspective than the one I have. I think the I wouldn't go so far as to say that Shanahan should be fired. I haven't seen anybody actually say that he should be fired. That's if anybody says that, they're um
No, I'm
still
just
hungover from their partying yesterday or something. But I do think they choked. I think it was a pretty classic example of a team that had their opponents locked down until the last few minutes. I mean, we're talking about the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, where there reasonably should only be time for maybe one or two opposing team drives. And the Niners choked on both sides of the ball. They not only did the offensive line just completely collapse and gave way to a Kansas City team that had not done a D line that had not done much up until that point. And also the defense, just whether it was the speed of the receivers, they just weren't able to keep up at the end, or I don't know exactly what happened. It's just they kind of gave up these big plays. Two of them were on Sherman, who's clearly lost a step. I mean, he's not as fast as he used to be, and he's going up against some of the fastest receivers in the league. So to me, it was totally inexcusable. And I think that anybody objectively looking at the situation should say that it was inexcusable, because you're up by 10 points with 6 minutes left. You got to be able to run out the clock. You got to be able to get a stop of some kind when you have an elite defense, and you have to be able to get a couple of first downs. I mean, that's really all it took. It's just basic rudimentary football, and they couldn't play that in the last 6 minutes. So I was really disappointed with what I saw in that time. I also thought that they went away from the run, which you did point out. They were I think it was 6.7 yards a carry on average for the game as a whole, and they went away from that at the end. And this has happened before. It happened in a couple of their losses this season, where they went away from the run and they got burned by it. And I have heard people saying, well, the couple times that when they passed when they should have run, they were safe passes, and Jimmy just got unlucky because Chris Jones swatted it down at the line of scrimmage. Okay, maybe one of those swats you can call lucky, but Chris Jones just kind of went off at the end, and I don't know if I don't know. I personally, when you're in that kind of situation where you need to run out the clock, you run the ball when you have 6.7 yards a carry. It's that simple. I thought Shanahan tried to get too creative in that situation, and it burned him again, right? This is the second time he's been burned because of the kind of play calling he had. It's almost like he's too conservative when he needs to be really aggressive, and then in situations like that, he's too aggressive when he needs to be more conservative. So what I want to do real quick is, maybe it won't be so quick, I don't know, we'll see, is kind of go through the flow of the game, because I thought there were some interesting moments, ups and downs in this game, and it's interesting and fun, I guess, fun for someone that's at someone else's funeral to go through this. So first half, let's talk about the first half. So the Niners come out, they stop the Chiefs on their first drive as a 3-and-out. And I thought, okay, this is looking good. The Niners defense showed up. This is going to be a good game. The Niners go down, their drive stalls out, they kick a field goal. And then not all of what I'm about to say is like drive by drive in exact sequence. I'm probably going to skip a drive or two here and there, but the Chiefs go down the field and Mahomes scores a rushing touchdown and the team goes up 7-3. And man, did Tart blow that play. I thought he was standing on the goal lines. He saw Mahomes was rushing in. I thought he should have been more aggressive, and the commentators were saying something dumb like, "Oh, well, if he had run out to get him, then he would have been burned." And I'm like, he has the ball and he's like 3 yards away from the end zone. If you go out and try to get him and you don't get him, that's the same thing as if you stay back and he gets in. You're getting burned either way. So the better thing to do is be aggressive and try to make the stop. I thought that was a misplay by Tart, and it ended in a touchdown. And then, so here we are sitting 7-3, and then the Niners get the ball, and Jimmy doesn't throw the ball away properly. He sort of floats it out in the air as he's getting tackled. It doesn't go far enough, and it gets intercepted. And I just, I've said this several times in the season that Jimmy needs to improve at throwing the ball away. Sometimes he keeps it a little bit too long, or he keeps it, he waves his arm out there in obvious pressure situations. He needs to be able to get the ball away. Elite guys like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, they know how to throw the ball away when they're in trouble. And because he's a pocket passer, that becomes all the more important to be able to do that. So the ball's intercepted by Breland, and this is when I thought I have a bad feeling about this game. The Chiefs were up 7-3. They get the ball back on a turnover with good field position, and the momentum had clearly shifted to Kansas City. The Chiefs then move the ball down the field. They convert a 4th and 1, and after that 4th and 1 conversion, I said to myself, I think the tide has turned. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. I have a bad feeling about this. But
What
of
was
course,
the score at that point?
what was that?
What was the score at that
It was
point?
7-3. But the
Okay.
Chiefs were coming down the field and were picking up momentum after a turnover. So then the Niners actually force a stop. They force a field goal. There was a great open field pass breakup on 3rd and 7, and that forces the field goal. So the Chiefs stick to 10-3. Now, so Joseph, at this point in the game, how did you feel about where the game was headed?
Well, I think I remember texting you, and I said that the Niners have to score on that drive, and they did. That's when they had that touchdown to Juszczyk.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I was hoping that. Okay, I'll say this. I was not thinking that the Chiefs. I wasn't as worried as you were. I guess I figured that the Niners were going to come out, and I think they're just going to consistently wear down the Chiefs defense, which they didn't actually do in the game. But I was thinking that, and I was thinking that the Chiefs had to keep coming back and scoring. So I guess what I figured in this game and at that point was the Niners could keep coming back and always have potential to make good drives and score on almost any possession, whether it's a field goal or not. And that due to the Niners' great defense and the Chiefs' great offense, that just the probability of those offsetting, how many times would that offset for the Chiefs to keep scoring? And once the Niners scored again and it was 10-10, I was like, oh, this is just an even game, and it's going to the real difference is going to be how consistent is the Niner run game and how often can the Chiefs pull out a score on that Niner defense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis at the point where the Niners scored that Juszczyk touchdown. But I think before that, on that drive where it looks like Kansas City was going to come down and score another touchdown and go 14-3, I thought at that point the game was probably over. And the Niners got the stop, and then they did score the Juszczyk touchdown. And on that drive where they scored the Juszczyk touchdown, the Niners' run game had been really hit or miss. Like, they hadn't really gotten it going up to that point. But that drive was when it really started to take off and did well for the rest of the game until they just arbitrarily decided to stop using it when it mattered in the 4th quarter. So then, the Niners tie the game 10-10, and They get the ball back. They get a great stop. They get the ball back with a minute 30 seconds left, and they don't get the ball back. The Chiefs are about to punt, and they don't take a timeout to keep 1:30 on the clock. And because they don't take a timeout when they had 3 timeouts left, the Chiefs burned another 30 seconds off the clock. The Niners didn't get the ball until there was only 1 minute left on the clock to do that final drive. They run the ball a couple of times. It doesn't go anywhere. And then Jimmy throws that deep pass to Kittle, and the OPI wipes out a 40-something yard gain. Ugh. So I got to say something about that call. When I saw the replay, I said, yeah, that's an OPI technically. It is. But man, was that unprecedented for that ever to be called. I mean, I don't think I saw a single game this year where that kind of OPI was called, where a receiver clearly has a step on the defender. He basically stiff arms him and then reaches out for the ball after, of course, the defender's doing the typical cat clawing thing to try to get the arm down. We see that all the time, and it's never called. So I was disappointed in the inconsistency on that they didn't just kind of let that go, because I'm usually in favor of rules being called, but if you never call it, then you shouldn't call it in a Super Bowl, right? That's not the first time you should make that call.
So I think that's some fair analysis. I would say that I think the precedent part, or lack thereof, is mostly due to overturning it, where they look at it again and it's been really overturned. And I'm pretty sure what Gene Steratore said last night was, they're both kind of doing the hand grab kind of thing, that they're touching each other. But it was the second attempt, on the second touch from Kittle, he pushed off and created distance, and they saw that, and then they called it. So if he had not done that, then they would have let him. They would have not called it. So it was that second attempt that created distance that they called.
Yeah, I still think it's unprecedented. I just didn't see that kind of play called during the season, and I also don't think Kittle even needed to do that, right? He's capable of catching contested balls. Like, he does that all the time, and he had enough of a lead on the defender to be able to still do it. And if anything, I think if he had not pushed off, they might have called a DPI for the defender, anxiously at the last minute desperately trying to stop him from catching, but instead he made a mistake there. And that just where the yardage was enough for a field goal if they had kicked it on the very next play, let alone the whatever 20 to 30 seconds left with at least one timeout that they had to try to score a touchdown. So
I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking out here. Was that at the end of the game or end of the first half?
That was at the end of the half when the Niners had the ball on that final drive. And
that's right, because afterwards they kneeled, right?
They kneeled and then went to halftime 10-10.
Got it.
And I remember one of the commentators saying, "Well, Shanahan must be happy because they're with this, because they didn't give the ball back to the Chiefs and they get the ball at the start of the second half." How many times have I said, just because you're getting the ball at the start of the second half doesn't mean you can't go out and score at the end of the first half? I hate when teams do this. It doesn't matter if it's the Niners or anybody. I hate when teams don't try to kick the other team in the face by scoring another touchdown at the end of the first half. That's devastating, right? And I don't know why we didn't go for it there. It was so disappointing. So, then Mahomes, go ahead.
I'll say, especially when you started the game pretty gutsy, which I liked, and you saw that the Chiefs were going for it on fourth down and not being conservative.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they needed to match that aggressiveness. So then Mahomes got super lucky with that fumble recovery. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
When the ball just fell right at his feet. Oh, I'm just going to land on it.
That's the one that Bosa knocked out, right?
Yeah. And then, who, by the way, Bosa was fantastic last night. He was in Mahomes' face on every play, beat the rush every time. I mean, I wish I wish that had translated into more sacks and more like obvious mistakes because man, Mahomes was definitely under pressure from Bosa the whole game. And I'm pretty sure if the Niners had won, Bosa probably would have gotten Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
But then the very next play after I was like, oh, of course he gets lucky on this. Mahomes decides that Fred Warner is a Kansas City Chiefs receiver. And the Niners get the ball back in a critical situation. So at this point, I think it's still 10-10, right? Or no, I think it's 13-10.
I think you had a field goal before the interception.
Yeah, because I remember on the Warner interception drive, the Niners scored a touchdown and they went up 20-10. So that's right. They had already kicked a field goal.
Then I was worried. At that point, I'll do a reverse now. At that point, I was worried because I thought, well, even if the Chiefs can do this kind of Mahomes miracle kind of thing, I just think that the Niners are going to be able to go down and score enough points to edge out.
Yeah. And on that drive that they scored, there was a obvious PI no call on Emmanuel Sanders, and then there was redemption from that when looks like we just lost our YouTube stream. Okay. Well, let's get that back up and running. Hell, Chrome browser just crashed.
Oh, lame.
Okay, I should be able to get this back up and running quickly.
Is it still recording us right now, though, or the software?
Yes, it is.
So it'll upload this still.
Yeah. So yes. Well, so it just jumped back on live. So if you're watching live, if you can go ahead and just shoot a quick message in the comments. I'm pretty sure based on what I'm seeing that we're live again. We just had a little blip. Chrome crashed on me, but it reloaded the page. So let us know if you can hear us in the comments. That would be much appreciated. So on back to the discussion. So right after that PI no call, redemption, Kendrick Bourne gets a huge yardage first down catch, and they end up scoring the touchdown. Now, on the next Chiefs drive, Moore gets that interception. So it's now been back-to-back interceptions. And I think for a Chiefs fan, it probably was this that really put the nail in the coffin as far as anxiety, I would think, because the Niners are up 20-10, and then they get a turnover, and it's like, all right, is this just going to snowball for the rest of the game? And on that drive, the Niners score no points. The Chiefs stand up tall. That was the drive when the refs missed the offsides on the Chiefs on the 3rd and 14 where Jimmy got pushed out of bounds. Do you remember that? There was that play where Jimmy ran and he got like 2 yards and got pushed out of bounds.
Yes.
And everybody was in an uproar. I was disappointed because I don't think they showed a replay of that.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it either. I remember saying that to my roommate, looking for one.
Yeah, because it felt in the moment, it felt like a penalty, but without seeing exactly where their feet were when he got pushed, I can't say for sure. So I can't call it a bad call, but I was just shocked that they didn't that they didn't show a replay of it, because normally they would, with a controversial thing like that. So then the final drive, or the next drive, was that ridiculous elbow catch by the Chiefs.
Why am I forgetting this?
It was the call that they overturned. They called it a catch on the field, but then they overturned it.
Oh, the where the ball went touched the ground. It was
it was the elbow catch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, where he caught it and.
Yeah, and then it got overturned, and I texted, for the record, Joseph, and I said I disagree with that, which Joseph can verify, and then the
next play was that huge throw to Tyreek Hill.
Right, and it was like 40 yards or something, 38 yards or something like that.
44 yards.
Yeah, that was bad, but you kind of expected, I mean, even as a Niners fan, I expected there to be one or two deep passes to some of those fast receivers. I mean, that's going to happen when you're playing a Chiefs team that's good like that has that kind of speed. But then on third down, Tarvarius Moore gets a PI call on Travis Kelce in the end zone and puts the ball at the 1 yard line, and the Chiefs score on the next play to go 2017. I couldn't disagree more with that PI call. I thought watching the replay, the ball, they were mutually clawing each other, which we see all the time, is never called. And then when the ball was in the air, Moore jumped in front of Kelce, but made like as obvious as you can be, his arms were up in the air like he was going down a roller coaster. He wasn't touching him at all. And the ball misses Kelce's hands, they fall down, and a flag comes out. And I gotta say, I mean, first of all, that call resulted in the Chiefs just got handed a touchdown, right? When it's 1st and 10 at the 1 yard line, you're basically handing the team a touchdown. I don't know what more to say about that. I don't think that was a PI. I think that was a terrible call. I don't know why it wasn't reviewed. I don't know why Kyle didn't challenge it. It was a terrible call.
So I'm still torn on this because we talked about this earlier. I can see why it is and why it isn't a PI. What I'm so confused now is, I understand what you're saying, and you're saying it's clearly not a PI, and then Gene's territory, and I'm not comparing you two. Trust me, there's been plenty of times where even the experts have made bad calls and Jeremy and I are in agreement. But usually, when Gene says that something is clearly a call or not, I usually agree with him. There's been several times where he's unsure, where he kind of gives his opinion, and I'm like, no, it's clearly this, and I'm pretty, convinced about it. This is probably one of the only, if not few times, where Gene was like, oh yeah, that's clearly a penalty for this and this reason. And to where I'm like, I don't know about that. And then now I'm hearing you say the opposite. So I'm torn. Maybe it's one of those where it should not be a PI, but the presuppositional rule of it being a PI is valid. But maybe that needs to be changed because it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument that I've heard for it being a PI is that he didn't turn around to make a play on the ball. But that only matters if you're holding. Right? If you are perfectly allowed to jump in front of someone's line of sight. I can jump whenever I want. And if it's in front of someone's, if it blocks their ability to catch the ball or it blocks their eyesight, that's completely legal if you're not touching them. There's no rule against that. So he didn't like use Kelce's arm as a rope ladder to like pull himself up so that he could then jump and put his hands up. He just jumped and put his hands up and got a call. So that call handed the Chiefs a touchdown, and it was 2017. And the Niners had an opportunity when they got the ball back. The Niners had an opportunity, and we're now in like 5 minutes or less in the fourth quarter. The Niners had a chance to drive down the field, at least kick a field goal or not burn 3 to 4 minutes off of the clock, force Kansas City to use timeouts, etc. They couldn't do it. And then you trickle down to the very last opportunity. The Chiefs score their next touchdown, 24-20. The Niners have one more opportunity to score and take the lead back. And on the very last chance, he throws, I think it was it 3rd and 10 or something like that? He throws a deep pass to an open Sanders, and he airmails him.
Yeah,
and that was it. That was equivalently it at that point that the game was over. And how great would that have been if he had caught that and made it a touchdown? Because, I mean, at that point, 27-24, I think there were still at least a couple minutes left, right? There was still time for the Chiefs to go down and score again, potentially. So it would have made it a much less, Like, I still would have been heartbroken, but if they had at least had scored that touchdown, I would have felt a little bit better than I do now, because I think Shanahan's play calling wouldn't have come into as much question. This whole narrative of like Jimmy withering under pressure wouldn't have been as strong. That would have been mitigated by a touchdown in that situation. So I was heartbroken that didn't happen. And then, the Chiefs get that garbage extra touchdown on the 38. And when I say garbage, I mean it's garbage time equivalently at that point. The 38-yard run, and that ices the game 31-20. So to close it out, I guess I'm going to ask you, Joseph, the narratives that are going to be playing this offseason with respect to Shanahan's play calling and with respect to Jimmy's ability to play under pressure. I want you, as a more objective third party, to say what you think the validity of those narratives are and how you perceive those two issues.
Okay. I'll start with the Jimmy G one. So, I disagree with him not being able to play under pressure criticism. And it's weird that the default for people, the baseline is like clutch excellence, which is kind of absurd. I don't know if people have been watching too much of Tom Brady, but that can't be your baseline, is like Joe Montana, Tom Brady driving down to win the game all the time.
Or Russell Wilson.
Oh gosh, yeah. I repressed that, so now you brought it up. But yes, or Russell Wilson. It doesn't mean that you don't want that. It doesn't mean that it'd be great to see that every now and then. But the baseline cannot be consistent clutchness. That's so. The thing is, I mean, Jimmy G is not expected to be Tom Brady, and I actually think he's played better than what people thought he could or would do. Like, he had a good year this year, and I was actually kind of impressed with how he played in the Super Bowl for the most part. There was a little bit of desperation at the end, but he made some good throws. And he did, when he got rushed and pressured, he wasn't very good. But yeah, so I think that criticism has very little merit. As for the Kyle Shanahan one, it does have merit or more, but not to the length that everyone thinks. And the problem is, what everyone's going to be comparing this to, it's like they're just, and it's definitely a fallacious argument, is they're going to be taking what happened with the Falcons, completely independent situation, and that was actually, I think, more on the players themselves. And trust me, we don't need to recap that. That was an independent situation. That should not add to what you say to this event now. Like, you can put it into your career mindset of Shanahan, but that's kind of dumb if you're then trying to use that as a whole for what happened in this Super Bowl. They're completely independent. So there can be some criticism there. I think the two big ones are what happened at the end of the first half and not running the ball more in the fourth quarter. And like, those are fair criticisms, but not to the extent that people are going to be saying. I can say that.
I think that's valid. I think I roughly land where you're talking. I don't know. The not sticking with the run, I think, is more baffling, because the conservative play calling in the first half was, I can see the other argument, which is that it's a minute and a half left. You don't want the Chiefs to get the ball back, and so you sort of carefully plan your way out of the Chiefs getting the ball back. Okay, there's an element of validity to that, but the problem is that just assumes that A, your offense isn't capable of scoring, and B, that your defense isn't capable of stopping the other team. And I think that the first of those two is more egregious than the second, because again, they're playing Patrick Mahomes, who can score on any defense. And so just not, it sort of just lends a disbelief in your offense, which I don't like. And I agree about Jimmy. I thought the issue more was that the O-line just collapsed in the back half of the fourth quarter. The O-line just, I don't know what Kansas City's D-line just like took drugs on the sideline in the last couple of drives, because it just looked like the O-line totally fell apart in those last couple drives on pass protection. So I put that a little bit more on the O-line than I do on Jimmy, but I thought Jimmy did make some mistakes and has a lot of room to grow, but I'm glad he's our starter, and I'm not worried about him long term.
Okay.
All right. So that difficult section of the practice squad is now behind us. So we can, from this point on, only look forward to next season. But before we look forward to next season, we're going to talk about something a little bit lighter, which is our favorite Super Bowl 54 commercials. So, Joseph, I don't know if you knew this, but it now costs $5.6 million for 30 seconds of on-air time during the Super Bowl.
And I remember when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure it was $1 million or $1 million for a minute.
They showed a graph, and you can see like the increase in cost, but at the same time, like the increase in inflation. And it used to be, I don't remember the initial numbers, it was like a few $1,000 or something. And then it's like totally inflated over time now to $5.6 million for 30 seconds. Just crazy.
Yeah.
So what were your favorite commercials this year?
All right, I wrote these down. I got a bunch here. I'll just try to give like 5 or so. Okay. The Boston accent smart car, the smart pot. I did. So when I first saw Chris Evans and the other lady, I recognize her from comedies, SNL, I think. Forgot her name. And I'm like, they don't talk like that in real. Like that's not how they really talk. And then I saw John Krasinski, whatever his name is. I'm like, okay, this is totally like played up. I'm like, my goodness, they're really going for it. And then Big Poppy at the end.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, just like, hey, there's no driver in the car. So great, he's got smart car. So that was a good one. So the next one was okay for me.
I felt that it felt like that commercial went on for 3 minutes. Like the
It-
way it was playing out and how many times they said smart car, like it just felt like it went on forever. And I think that was part of the humor of it. But yeah, that was a pretty good commercial. I like that one.
So this next one I thought was okay. It's a good commercial, but I think you'll like it more for certain reasons. The Groundhog Day commercial.
Oh yeah.
I know you like Bill Murray and Groundhog, but yeah, that is a good one. Oh my gosh, this one was frustrating because Tom Brady faking retirement.
Oh, that was so great. That made my list of favorites.
It was a good one. It is, but I'm just like, dang it! I thought he was when they started it. I was like, oh, he had tweeted a picture, a week or so back of like him going through the tunnel, but like from the backside of that commercial. And some people were like, oh, is this retiring? No. Some even thought, oh, this might have to do with Kobe's death. People were like speculating, and then it turns out it was for this fake retirement Hulu commercial. And I thought he legitimately was announcing his retirement in a commercial. And then I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's good, but obviously I want him to be gone. But it was a commercial.
So the funny thing, the ironic thing is, I actually think that pretty much for sure means that he is not retiring.
No, I know.
Right,
and
like that's what's funny about it. And yeah,
at the end he's like, oh, I'm definitely not going anywhere or something like that. He said that.
Although I don't think in real life he's officially said that though, right?
No, just in the commercial.
Just in the commercial.
But I would doubt that. Yeah, he'll stay around for a year or two. And then obviously I think we know what the best one is, and I have some more, so I'll definitely say that for the answer. Don't worry. The Snickers in the Earth one was kind of dumb but funny.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty dumb.
Did
you? Okay, one of my favorites was the Cheetos can't touch this one.
Dude, that is literally next in my list. And the guys, the first person to do it, the manager that asked for help, his voice, it's that typical like TV show. I can't explain it, but his voice was just like, hey, I need some help with this. Oh, sorry. Never mind. And then a beloved commercial, the classic, what are you wearing, Jake from State Farm?
Oh yeah.
So I'm glad I know they added a different, the ending was different, but they reused the same commercial, but that's a classic. Here's Johnny.
They had that weird the Doritos commercial with like the Western dance
Oh
off.
yeah, yeah. It was funny, but not. It was okay. It was more weird than it was
Yeah, it
good.
was weird. I agree.
I did like this one was also weird. I did like the here's Johnny. Here's Mountain Dew Zero of
Oh,
the Shining remake.
the Shining one.
Yeah, yeah, that was funny. Um, especially when he's like, "Here's Mountain Dew Zero," and she's freaking out, and then he's like, she was like, man, I'm saying like a lot. I don't know why, but she said, "Oh yeah, I'm thirsty." So, and then I got two more here. So, oh, Little Caesars, best thing since sliced bread.
Oh yeah, the Dwight from The
Yeah,
Office. Yeah.
and then Dwight Schrute started freaking out. And then the last one here, we know which one was the best. And the last one was actually the first one, and that is the next 100 when that kid catches the ball. He's like, "Take it to the house, kid," and then they just go throughout this great series of him running and NFL players helping out, and then he gets to New York City. And that grandma punches out the ball, and they start tackling each other. And
Yeah.
Ray Lewis shows up and blows someone up.
Yeah, and then some
And
lady
then
tackles Ray Lewis, and then yeah, like a guy gets like thrown into a food truck or something.
yeah, yeah. And then so it had great elements of being like funny and serious and just kind of cute. But then just the ending was great, where he's walking in the tunnel, and this is still the commercial. All the Hall of Famers are there, and then Peyton Manning's like, "You know what to do, kid," and gives him the ball. And then they cut to the actual Super Bowl. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm hoping that they were playing that commercial at the Super Bowl, or else the people at the Super Bowl wouldn't have felt it or understood like
Yeah.
we did.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm sure
hoping
they
that,
were. I'm sure they were.
yeah, because that was genius. It was emotional, it was funny, it was cute, and it was ultimately brilliant.
Yeah,
So
that was my
that,
favorite too. I think that was supposed
yeah,
to be sort of like
yep.
the spiritual like successor to the one at like the fancy dinner party from last year,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, that was, yeah, that was, which was pure just hilariousness. But
I hope every year we get a bunch of famous ex NFL players tackling each other in some form or another in a commercial. We have to get that from now on. The standard, the bar has been set.
did you love how Jimmy G was acting like the bellhop, and Joe Montana says to Steve Young, or Steve Young is like, "Oh, you better give him a tip," and Joe Montana's like, "Oh yeah, I'll give him a tip." And he told Jimmy G to get his luggage. Oh man, I bet that. So, I'm sorry, man, but I bet that felt a lot worse for Jimmy G after the loss.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. He
But,
probably had a lot more confidence going into the game than after. All right,
but good for the
so
Cardinals.
our final pseudo final segment of the night is the biggest disappointments of 2019, and this segment is really designed to look back over the 2019 NFL season, and Joseph and I mutually decided on a list of 5 disappointing aspects of the NFL season. And these are actually, none of them were teams or how teams did or like results of games. It all had to do with rules and other non-game related aspects of the NFL. So the first disappointment this year, and also as another thing to set the context, is that any of the things we list, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the first year that that's been a problem or that this is the only year that that's a problem, but it's an area where we felt like there was an especially high level of disappointment in that area. So the first one was ball spotting. Throughout this season, and you can go back and probably find 6 or 7 episodes at least just from this season, or just from the last 3 months, of Joseph and I complaining about how not only there were so many bad ball spotting, like ball locations, but how fickle it is and how inexact it is. And we've made the comment that there should be some kind of sensor in the football with the GPS system to say exactly where it is. Instead, you got some old guy moving the ball back and forth like 4 feet, being like, oh, where's the ball? Oh, it's here. And then he puts it there, and it's clearly like 2 feet behind where the line to gain is, or clearly 2 feet ahead. Um, so yeah, Joseph, what did you think about ball spots this year beyond the obvious?
Yeah, well, it was worse in the postseason, which makes it even more frustrating for how important that is. Yeah, I don't, I'm saddened by how they just haven't invested more into better ideas. And while this, go back to the Super Bowl actually really quick, it's not really it kind of is ball spot. Camera locations. The Damian Williams touchdown that was controversial, did he cross the plane or not? And they had some decent views, but again, it's like, how can you not have, two orthogonal views, perpendicular views, a top down and then right at the goal line? Because they had that one that was close looking at the goal line, but it was at a slight angle, and it's deceptive.
Yeah.
So that's a form of ball spotting, I guess, but just the lack of investment into ideas, technology, more personnel, whatever, to improve on this, especially when you're right. It could just be a guy saying, gets the ball from someone in the pile and like, here it is. Well, if that is going to make it the difference between third and inches, fourth and inches, or first down, that's huge. And of course, he's going to be a few inches off at least, if not more like a foot or two. So it's embarrassing.
And also the issue that I don't even think we ever brought this up during the season, but what if the ball is under a pile? How are you supposed to make
Yes.
that determination? And you can't, what they do is they try to peel off the guys and see where the ball is after that, but it moves around so much under the pile. Guys try to move it ahead. And that actually happened, the Mostert touchdown where he was tackled and then there was a bunch of guys on him and they called it a touchdown, but they showed a side view. There was no way the side judge could see where that ball was. Like it was
Yeah.
totally obscured by other players. So
They just assumed he got pushed in by a lineman.
right, exactly. So it's just it isn't, it's not up to the ref to like decide the trajectory of the ball and then say, oh, do quick physics in his head and say, okay, that's where the ball would be. They have to know where it is, and a sensor would fix that. So NFL, with your billions of profit, spend some money figuring that out. I don't think it's that tough of a problem. So number 2, and Joseph, I'm going to let you take the lead on this one, is quarterback sliding.
AKA
Whew.
Russell Wilson rule.
Yeah, aka Russell Wilson cheating.
Yeah, so I'm glad that Mahomes, he had the one slide down, but it was like it was set up to where he didn't use it to cheat. Like he just slid right before or way before. And I'm glad that he had a couple runs to where he actually ran. And I actually love that he was aggressive when he got hit by a tart and the ball came out, the
Yeah.
goal line. I love that. And he had that one diving play for the first down.
He got blown up a
Yes,
couple times
he
last night.
yeah. Um, I'm lucky he didn't hurt his left shoulder when he got hit by Tart. That was a pretty big hit. Um, but this rule, I'm sure that this was started decades ago when quarterbacks weren't very athletic or fast, at least athletic in the running sense. And it was a way of just added protection of, okay, if a quarterback runs, he's just trying to escape. He's probably not going to go for a lot of yards. He's not going to pull Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or Russell Wilson, and he's just going to kind of slide down. It's a way of, keeping him safe, and he's not going to get taking advantage of this. Well, then we get Randall Cunningham, 80s, 90s, comes along, and is a good runner. I didn't watch him much. I can look at the replays, but don't know how many times he slid if that rule was in place. Michael Vick comes along, one of the best quarterback runners. Definitely did this. But Russell Wilson, to me, has done the worst with it because he's not the most athletic. He's not the fastest. He's not the most agile. But he manipulates this to the nth degree. And he has the right to do that, per se. I'm not complaining about that. But they need to change the rule because it has an unfair advantage for a mildly athletic quarterback, not Russell Wilson, but any mildly athletic quarterback. And it creates this really unfair, unreasonable dichotomy between a quarterback runner and any other person on the field running with the ball. So they need to get rid of it. If a quarterback can cross the line of scrimmage and gets substantial yards, why is he not being treated like a runner? How many times I've seen, I remember if my brother's listening, I remember the play a couple years ago when Big Ben was running, and I forgot who it was, but it was on the Panthers, and he comes in and he hits him, and everyone lost their mind, and the Steelers like, no, you're all wrong. Big Ben had been running for a full head of steam for like 15, 20 yards, and then he decides to slide. The guy came in, guys, it's simple physics. He barely hit his head, but just, due to momentum and the fact that Big Ben is sliding, he doesn't have much inertia with his head, and the guy tapped his head. Of course, it's going to look violent. His head's going to bounce backwards and hit the ground. But that's absurd. If a guy's been running for that long and then he goes to slide at the very last second, a defender can't just not get out of the way. So, and Russell Wilson seems to slide at guys like it's almost intentional. And I hope it's not, because that would be deceptive. So they need to change that rule, and I think it'd make the game more fair and honestly more fun, because then it'd make the running quarterbacks who are really good, they'd have to earn it. And if they do, they might get popped. Maybe they don't do it again. Or if they succeed, that just makes them more tough and more courageous, which I like to see. So,
But you know that they're never going to do that because the NFL thinks that it's the quarterbacks that make the NFL money, and they want to do whatever they can to protect quarterbacks. All the rules have only been going more and more in the direction of protecting quarterbacks, to the point where a guy tore his ACL last season avoiding penalty causing impact on a quarterback for a sack. There's been just all kinds of sliding plays that were dumb. So I completely 110% agree with you, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and to refute what you said, not you, but that's going to happen, to object to that, which is sad, is that then make them be more quarterback-like and be from the pocket. Because I do agree to a certain extent to quarterback protection in the pocket. But once they run and they're out there and they're past the line of scrimmage and they're running full head of steam, they're not serving as a quarterback anymore. So the NFL should not be inconsistent with that. Fine, keep the quarterback safe in the pocket. But once he starts running and he's trying to get a 15, 20-yard gain, don't just have him slide in the middle of the field and then get penalized. And you see this all the time. The quarterbacks stand up like, where was the penalty? Where's the flag?
I know. Yeah.
Where's the flag? It's like, so in that aspect, it's unfair, it's inconsistent. He doesn't function as a quarterback anymore. They need to change it, but you're right. For bad reasons, they won't.
Yeah. So the next biggest disappointment is something that they may actually change, and that is PI. This year, we had almost every game of the week that we talked about this year, there was one form or another of problematic PI calling. Whether it was calls that were called but shouldn't have been, or calls that weren't called that should have been. And I don't know. I felt like they created the rule that PI could be challenged as a way to address that atrocious Saints-Rams no call last year. But it didn't really amount to much. It was only overturned, I think, 4 or 5 times the entire season. They seemed very reluctant to overturn it. And when that's the case, if you're never going to overturn it, the rule's not really doing what it's intended to do, which is bring fairness to a call that's very difficult to make. So I don't really have a solution for how they should fix this problem, other than maybe making anytime a PI is called, making it automatically reviewed. And that way it has to be double checked so that there's accountability for it. That's only half a solution, because that doesn't protect against non-calls, but it would at least help some.
Yeah. I don't have much more to add to that. It has a good intent, but if you're not going to execute it properly, then what's the point of having it? Or come up with a better way to get rid of bad calls or non-calls.
Yeah. So I hope they come up with something next year. Rule changes are always slow in the NFL, but I hope that they're able to do something. Our fourth biggest disappointment of 2019 is the decision for who won the Comeback Player of the Year award. We already devoted part of an episode to this, so we're not going to talk about it for too long, but both Joseph and I agreed that Ryan Tannehill did not deserve it over Jimmy G, and that Jimmy G kind of got snubbed. He was, in my eyes, the obvious candidate uh, to win Comeback Player of the Year after the ACL and what he went through. And finally, our fifth biggest disappointment of 2019 is the overtime rules, the NFL overtime rules. And this is the only time that, and Joseph can affirm this, that this is the only time that I actually say that something about college is better. The college overtime rules are better than the NFL's.
That and maybe there's a second one, but it's a smaller one. It's recent. Remember I said in the championship game that the refs had GoPros on and near the end zone they could see replays better?
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, but in a larger sense, yes, this is the only real time that Jeremy has ever said that. On top of the many, trust me, everyone, I've been hearing this now for probably at least 8 years, the many times ripping on me watching college football, college basketball, college anything, and then of course talking about it. So Jeremy's team can lose and he can cry about it and I can be there like as a friend. But when my college team loses, and I literally cried several times when Michigan State has lost, and I can't even go to my friend Jeremy for that. So
I was very close to actually crying last night. I confess that on air. I was sitting on the couch so devastated last night, and there was such a whirl of emotions and trying to figure out exactly how I felt. And this, I think the biggest challenge for me last night in sorting through and parsing out my emotions was figuring out how I'm going to approach next year when the Super Bowl is now the standard. When you're a fan of a good team, and if you're the fan of a bad team, I'm sorry, and it sucks to be the fan of a bad team. But when you're the fan of a bad team, you can only look up, right? You can only look. You can look to the draft. You can look to trades. You can look to the offseason, and you can look to the next season. Every single game, everything. There's a chance that something could light a spark for you to climb up that ladder and get better and better and better until you eventually make it to the top. When you make it to the Super Bowl and you lose, there is no more up outside of winning the Super Bowl. So I'm not waiting 7 months to have this resolved. I'm waiting a year to have this resolved because I better see the Niners in the Super Bowl next year, because anything less than that, I'm telling you right now, is a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, luckily you were not a Bills fan in the 90s. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost.
Yeah, I don't know if I could handle that.
Yeah, and 2 of them were to the Cowboys.
Don't jinx the Niners, man. If they lose 4 straight Super Bowls, there's something wrong with the universe.
Yeah. But back to the question though. Yeah, overtime rules. So years ago they made the change about I'll start with this. The NFL has been embarrassingly slow on making changes with many things, and also way too fast on making changes for certain things. Sadly, the overtime rules is one of those things where they've been not slow, but embarrassingly slow, pathetically slow, as we like to say on the show, absurd, atrocious, whatever other word you want to throw out there for this. It's bad. For years, it was 15 minutes and first score, and it's done. Then finally, several years ago, I want to say, I don't know, we'll say 5 to 10, just throwing out memory. They made the change where it's now, if you score a field goal on the first drive, first possession, then if someone scores a field goal on the next, you keep going, and the next score wins. Or if it goes field goal and then touchdown, then the touchdown wins. That's still dumb. That this should not be decided by a coin toss. And sadly, that's happened with what happened with the Patriots game, the Patriots Falcons, is a coin toss decided that the Patriots went down and scored a touchdown. That's great. Good for them. They scored a touchdown. Guess what? The team had 60 minutes to determine the game, and they couldn't do it. One team got to have their offense play, and one team got to have their defense play. The game of football was not represented. If that's the NFL is just so inconsistent with this. It's completely unfair. It's inconsistent, and it needs to be changed. And the college system is great. Now you can change where to put the ball. That's fine. But the format of the college system is, I think, fantastic. You put the ball on someone's opposite field, meaning you're only 20, 30, 40 yards away from scoring a touchdown. I think in college, it's 25. And you basically just do a shootout. So I'll just do an example here. The Niners get the ball at the 25. They can kick a field goal. And then now the Chiefs get the ball. If they score a touchdown, it's over. If they kick a field goal, then they go to round 2. And they basically just rotate these. They repeat these rounds. And as someone who's watched a lot of college football and who has seen this many times, not only is it exciting, but it's very fair. And the more rounds you go, it gets more and more pressure, and it's still very exciting. And it makes teams become more and more desperate. They go for 2. Sometimes they miss. They go for it on 4th down. It's just it's great. So it'd make the game more exciting. It'd probably make the game get done faster, and it's a more fair way. There's literally nothing bad about it relative to the terrible system we have now. And now I'm done.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my argument has always been, if you only give a team one chance to stop the other team from scoring a touchdown, then it's an inherent inequality. An offense versus a defense does not reflect the whole of the football game, because the whole of the football game involved both your offense and your defense being on the field. An offense and a defense just inherently are not the same entity. So I would like to see that change again. I think that's something that we're probably a ways off from seeing any changes on, but which is unfortunate, but I think that's the way it is. So that wraps up our biggest disappointments of 2019. I'm sure we'll do a similar segment next year to talk about all of next year's disappointments. But I have to congratulate Joseph on not only his regular season winning record of 63.5% to my 61.2%, but also his postseason winning record of 73% to my 64%. We both picked the Niners, and of course the Niners lost, so that didn't move the needle for either of us. I ended the postseason 7-4. Joseph ended 8-3. So that is our 2019 predictions in ice. Before we close out tonight, typically our prediction segment is our last segment of the night, but before we close out, I wanted to give Joseph and I both a chance to express our thanks for watching the show this season, for sticking with us through all of the schedule changes and some urgent family issues that came up early in the season that caused us to miss a bunch of episodes. Thank you so much for being with us through all of the time changes and everything. There's a lot of rockiness this season, so we really appreciate you guys sticking with us, watching the episodes, being the practice squad faithful. And we have some minor changes I think we may make to the show next year, but unlike last year, I think we felt pretty good about the new format this year, where we focused on different teams, tried to get more teams involved in the discussion, spent a little bit less time on the Dolphins and the Niners and a lot more time on the different teams that may have not gotten the spotlight in the past. And we plan to continue doing that. But if you guys have any feedback on the show, things that you liked, things that you maybe really didn't like, sound off in the comments. We always read them. We'll take your feedback to heart and try to see how we can make the show better as a result. But I just want to thank you guys, because it was an awesome season, as rocky as it was, and as disappointing for me as it ended up being as far as results. The show itself was amazing, and Joseph and I know I can speak for him already to say that we're looking forward to doing another year. But Joseph, I'll give it to you to say how you feel about our show.
Yeah, I really liked the improvements that we made. Um, I felt like last year it took us several shows to kind of get into a groove before we found what we were doing. We did have a little bit of a rust at the beginning of this year, but we caught on a lot faster than last year. And yeah, all the postseason shows and the past 3 or 4 regular season shows were some of my favorite and flowed really well. Like the new setup and it was really fun. I want to thank my family. I know a lot of you listen, so thank you very much for that and giving us your feedback and listening faithfully each time. So it was a blast. And I will say this: the end of next year, there's going to be a fun surprise for those who listen. So end of next year, end of our 3rd season, there's going to be a fun surprise. That's all I'll say.
So tune in on February whatever of 2021 for Joseph's surprise.
And I think Jeremy might know what it is, but it's not a guarantee that he does. So it might be a surprise to him too.
That makes it all the more spicy. So I'll make sure to tune in next year on February 4th to watch, or February whatever, to watch the practice squad, roughly episode 60 something, maybe 70, which is kind of crazy to think about, to hear Joseph's surprise. If that doesn't get you through the off season, I don't know what will. Look forward to, at a minimum, Joseph and I want to do an episode on looking forward for the Niners and the Dolphins. It'll probably be a mini episode. We'll just kind of go over that one topic and talk about what we're hoping to see next year and some changes and stuff like that. And then we're going to do our post-draft show early May, mid-May likely. And then we'll jump back in for our pre-regular season show sometime in August or September, whenever the week before the regular season starts. So look forward to those shows. We'll let you guys know on Facebook and on Twitter. But Joseph, unless you have anything else to add, I'm going to go ahead and close this out.
Close us out.
You good? All right, we're closing
I'm
out
good.
the
Peace,
2019 season with a wrap. If you guys enjoyed tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer, both Twitter accounts that I do look at during the off season, so don't forget us in the months between February and September. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. This episode will be going up immediately after I hit end stream, so make sure to check it out if you missed it. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in a little while.